Good evening, everyone. I call this regular meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. Okay, we have Commissioner Lotz joining us. No, that's okay. We'll wait for him to be seated, and then we'll get to the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Rodriguez. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adrian, please call the roll.
Commissioner Shea, Commissioner Lotz,
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Present.
Vice Chair Barantes,
Present.
Chair Dong.
Present. Okay. We are on section number 1, approval of agenda order. Are there any objections to the agenda order? Hearing none, the agenda order is approved. Okay, we have a couple of announcements by Community Services Assistant Director, Matthew Morales-Stevens.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting is live streamed on Cable Channel 3 and our online platforms. If you wish to address the Community Services Commission during tonight's meeting, we request that you please complete a speaker's card and hand it to the clerk, Adrian Franquez. When speaking, please state your name for the record. If you wish to be added to the distribution list to receive Community Services Commission agendas, please email your request to cscommission@sgch.org.
Moving on to public comment. This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the Community Services Commission on items of interest that are not on the agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Community Services Commission cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear as an item on a future agenda. Adrian, do we have any public comments for tonight's meeting?
We do not.
Okay, moving on to our first set of action items, approval of minutes. The minutes are a record of the official actions taken at the Community Services Commission meetings on July 1st, 2024. Matthew, do we have any public comments on the action item?
We do not.
The time for public comment on this item is now closed. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the Community Services Commission regular meeting of Monday, June 3rd, 2024? Should that read July 1st? Okay, of July 1st on Monday.
I motion for approval. I second.
I'll take the vote. Commissioner Lotz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Barantes,
Aye.
Chair Dong.
Aye.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 ayes, 0 nays, 0 abstentions, and 1 absent.
Great. Great. Staff will now provide a recap on past events and an update on the planning process for certain programs and events. Staff will also provide a status report on the RFP process for the recreation management software vendor. Matthew or Adrian, whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. So we'll be calling some of our 2 recreation supervisors to do the majority of the presentation for you all tonight. But just as a brief introduction, they'll be going over summer camp, our Summer Parks with a Mission program, our aquatics programs, our sports program over at Jefferson, as well as our variety of summer special events. And then I'll go over some of our senior programs and then our July 3rd special event as a quick recap on that. And then at the end, we'll go through to some of our upcoming events and programs. So at this time, Anna, did you want to come forward?
Hi, good evening, Commissioner, Chair. My name is Anna Casillas. I'm one of the recreation supervisors, and I'm here to provide a recap on some of our youth summer programs. So we're going to kick off with our summer camp program. This was a 10-week themed week program. It ran Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m., and it was $140 per child per week. If you wanted extended care, that was $30 for each week. Our program boasts a 1 to 10 staff to camper ratio. In addition, we had our camp director and assistant camp director there at all points in time. Some of the fun activities that were included were twice-a-day arts and crafts, structured games, weekly pool days, excursions, both off-site and in-house, and our weekly Friday spirit days. Our program was held at Coolidge Elementary for weeks 1 through 9. We got to use their MPR room as well as 2 classrooms to house our 3 different groups of kids. For that last week, we moved to the Scout House at Vincent Lugo. Unfortunately, their air conditioning broke down. Even though we'd been testing it out, it broke down, so we had to move on to the Mission Playhouse classroom, and that worked out well. Some of our highlights of our program were our addition of STEAM activities. So one of them was our volcano project. So it's a week-long project. They got to build, create, and watch it erupt. Another fun project was a flower project. They had white flowers, food dye, water, and they got to see those flowers take color. So the kids really enjoyed these STEAM projects, as well as they had dance parties, they had karaoke talent shows. Some of our highlights of our field trip were our Mad Science trip, where they came to us and they did hands-on experiments in front of the kids. And then we went to John's Incredible Pizza, where they got to have a culinary experience where they got to make their own pizza and, of course, eat it. One addition to the program that we also did for this summer was our nutrition. The San Gabriel, we worked with the district nutritional services to provide breakfast and lunch for the campers. This was a great hit. A lot of campers took advantage of it. It looked like really delicious food. Of course, with any new program, there's always a couple hiccups. For that last week, because we were off-site, they weren't providing meals to us. We didn't include it in the newsletter, unfortunately, but for our future, we will make sure to clearly communicate and make sure we really emphasize that in newsletters. Another enhancement that we want to include for next summer is to include more STEAM activities, to have one every week, because they were so popular during the summer camp. Going on to our next program, that's Summer Parks with the Mission. So this is a free program. This is 2 different sessions. One was for 4 weeks at McKinley, and this was only open to McKinley students. It happened right after summer school. And then we had additional weeks that was available to all students ages 5 to 12, and this was held from 10 to 4. This program also includes some fun theme weeks, some arts and crafts, outdoor activities, and then Friday movie time, board game time, and some sports time outside. Some of the highlights you guys can see is this really cute rock show. They created their own pet rocks, and then they created houses for them. They also did a puppet show where they created brown bag puppets and then did a little show with them. So we really like this program, and we got up to 45 students for this. And for our middle school students, we had our Jefferson Sports Academy. This is also a free program. It's offered for grades 6 through 8, and we really highlighted 3 sports. So we highlighted soccer, basketball, and volleyball. So for this, we covered the basics, the fundamentals of the sports. We also covered different techniques, and we helped them participate in practice games. But our big goal was really to build up a passion for the sports, instill that love of sports, and then also to get them ready for tryouts, because throughout the year, these are the different sports that we offer, and so we really wanted them to get ahead for the year. This program also included a once-a-week art and craft to try to give them a little bit more well-roundedness, and it was met to big success. That is all for the beginning part, and then I'll hand it over to Andy to cover the rest.
Sorry, does anyone have any questions for Anna before she takes a seat?
So I can start off by saying my kids were enrolled in the summer camp, and I have to congratulate the city on making it so affordable for families. I think we didn't even increase the price from last year, which is amazing because of inflation that we've seen just about everywhere else. So is there a thought to increasing the price next summer, just so you can cover the costs of all the recreation talent that we have to run that 10-week program? It's a lot of work, yeah. Like 5%, or when you say small, what do you mean by that? Do you like ballpark? Okay. Okay, sure. And it's a lot of work because there are 100+ students, I think, each
Yes.
week.
Yes.
And that the roster will change per week too, because they don't require you to be there for all 10 weeks, so you can kind of pick and choose what works for you. So it must be really hard for all the staff to manage, like who's coming and who's going. So really appreciate that, that program exists. And also in a location that's so close by. I know that last week there was a little bit of a hiccup with the Girl Scout house. Did we ever get reimbursed from the Girl Scouts? Did you have to pay them, or how did that work?
We don't have to pay them, so.
Oh,
luckily,
okay, so
yeah.
it would have been, it's a free venue, okay. And the fact that there was food, I'm not sure if that, came out. Last year, I don't think there was food that was served. So this year, maybe with funding from COVID, perhaps, food was allowed. Mhm.
The school district amped up drastically the amount of food that they were providing at all of their sites, and so luckily Anna was great at communicating and able to make that connection and get ahead of it and kind of grab onto that before you tell us, because they would plan that all months in advance. So without Anna, that would have been impossible.
Is there a recurring revenue for that, or is this a one-off? This is the summer for free lunches.
Hopefully, I think now that we set a precedent, hopefully we can continue, but we'll keep working and talking with the school district, because it was great. A lot of kids really liked it, a lot of parents really liked it, so.
Right, it's very convenient.
Yeah.
Those are all my questions and comments for the summer programs. Do you gentlemen have any?
I was just curious how enrollment compared to previous years. It seemed steady or, yeah.
For Jefferson Sports Academy, it grew dramatically. It was their first year last year. This is their second summer, so they really increased it. Same for Summer Parks with a Mission. We saw an increase. For summer camp, we had almost sold out enrollment for every week. We ended up with about 919 kids in total, out of a total of possible 960. So that was really great.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Can we try one more time? Okay. Sorry, apparently my mic is not working, so I apologize.
Okay. I think I hear you just fine, though.
Yeah.
Better now?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I didn't have the switch on. Maybe it was user error. I apologize. But the full day fee will be going up to $145, and then extended care will be at $35.
That's still
so still not
amazing.
bad.
Yeah. And does that cover the cost of all the, staff that we have there each week? Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. So it doesn't cover the cost of the actual bus for the field trips, but it covers the cost of attendance to wherever they're going. It covers the staffing costs as far as the rec leaders, day camp director, and assistant day camp director. But it doesn't cover, Anna's time. That comes out of just the general fund. And then the buses come out of Prop A funding. So otherwise, it would be drastically more expensive for a program like this if we didn't have Prop A funding to supplement all of the bus trips. But again, that's another thing where Anna has strategically planned the trips, because a year or two ago or 3 years ago, we used to have every single week was a bus excursion. So by not having that and having a smaller in-house item where it's maybe only $350 to bring in a performer, we're not paying $2,000 for Sky Zone or something like that. So she's found creative ways to offset some of those items.
Have we ever thought of the 2-3 year plan, for example, because what if there's a drastic increase and, like, for example, the summer camp was very successful, and then next year, if we won't be able to cover everyone who would want to join or something, or what's the plan for that? Or do we have the facilities enough for everyone to join or something?
You know, this year we increased it from 90 to 100, and that seems like a good place to hold it. We had a small waiting list for some of the weeks, but that seems like a good number. And yes, some of it's space. We got the multi-purpose room and 2 classrooms. We were able to divide up the kids into 3 age groups, and that seemed to work out really, really well, of having those 3 groups of kind of like 30, 35 kids.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. I'll turn it over to Andy.
Good evening. My name is Andy Shoup, one of the recreation supervisors here as well. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for having me. I'm here to speak on 2 items that I was overseeing over the summer. First being our Summer in San Gabriel series, which kicked off with the inaugural Culture Fest on June 13th. We had about 2,500 attendees enjoying cultural performances and live music throughout the night, as well as an assortment of food trucks, engaging arts and crafts for children, community organization booths, which provided a variety of family-friendly activities. One of our booths contained a large world map on which our families and residents could place like a red sticker, which showed where they or their family originated from. And that was kind of cool because it left us with a pretty spread out map. I think some of you were there and you saw the map itself. We had quite a few red dots all over the place. And aside from it looking pretty interesting and neat, it led to a lot of really cool discussion with parents and their children about living in San Gabriel and where their family originated from throughout the world, whether it's first generation or several generations back now living in the city. So it really led to some great discussions with them. The series then continued on with 3 movie and concert evenings over at Vincent Lugo Park and 2 concerts here at the Mission Playhouse Plaza. Now on these nights, residents enjoyed live musical guests, food trucks, fresh popcorn, and more community organization booths, which continued the education as well as just general fun components of that. One of our movie and concert evenings, and certainly by far the busiest, was marketed as a kids concert. And this had magicians, sing-alongs, as well as Mario-themed crafts, which were led by our recreation leaders. More fresh popcorn, community organization booths at that one as well. We also had, we ended the evening, with our Super Mario movie here in the park. We're planning on continuing the series next summer, again, kicking off with Culture Fest, and next year the event will kick off on June 19th. And again, we'll feature movies and concerts in the park as well as concerts here at Playhouse Plaza. And then following that, over at the pool, we had a summer of aquatics. Now, entering the summer, we were faced with significant staffing shortages. Many of last year's lifeguards had left for school, and our recruitment efforts were not exactly yielding the needed results for a variety of reasons. But we knew we were going to have to get creative with the programs that we offered and how we offered those programs. So to begin with, we taught our Learn to Swim classes, and those were taught from June 10th through August 16th. As cycle 1 began, for an example of our shortages, we had less than half the swim instructor staff that we had last year. So we had to adjust our total available swim lesson capacity to match that, but we also adjusted the overall swim lesson schedule in order to maximize the efficiency of the availability and the classes that we do have to match that with the instructors. So for example, our total capacity for swim lessons this summer went down by 300 spaces from last year. However, we were only down 150 in total enrollment. So through an adjustment in this class schedule, as well as how we kind of laid everything out with the staff, we were able to minimize the overall impact with swim lessons. So our registration was still down due to staff, but it wasn't down as much. And then our public swim program, we knew we wanted to expand in some areas, and this was one area where we could. So we added 1 more session per week, which led us to having sessions on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And overall, that led to an increase in participation in that program of about 16%. So we were down in swim lessons, we were able to be up over on our recreation swim side. So as summer continued, though, we interviewed interested candidates. We changed our strategy a little bit. So instead of requiring they have certifications prior to joining us, we just required that they come in for an interview, and we tried to pick the staff who had the best attitude and overall way of doing things, if you figure it that way, and then we can get good quality staff and then train them on how to be lifeguards and swim instructors. It's much easier to give somebody those skills than to teach them to be a good person, for example. So we just targeted it that way, and that yielded some great results. We were able to hire 4 more staff midway through the summer. They were great people, and once we got them trained on the skills they needed to be lifeguards or swim instructors, we were able to then continue to increase our swim lesson capacity throughout the summer. That's a strategy we're continuing now as some of our summer guards have left for school. We are refilling that. So we just hired 2 more, for example. Again, great people. So we're going to get them in the pool here soon and get them trained on the certification and get them the certifications that they need. And that'll give us a nice full complement of staff for the winter time. As we head into summer in 2025, we're going to begin our recruitment efforts a little bit earlier than we did this year. And that's the main goal there, is to start the summer with a full complement of staff. We can get them nice and trained when they're here. As you can see here, we spent a lot of time over the summer getting our staff trained, getting them to have the skills needed, but also maintaining those skills throughout the summer. So with that, as soon as we get everybody ready to go, we will have a fully staffed aquatics team, as long as everything goes according to plan. And we continue to increase our learn to swim capacity as well as our public swim capacity, both in terms of how many people we can allow into the program, as well as how many programs are offered. And then we can reintroduce things like lap swimming and water aerobics, and hopefully some aquatics special events throughout the summer. So with that, I'm open to any questions or comments you may have regarding the 2 programs.
So I thought that the aquatics program this year, it started off kind of rocky because some classes were canceled without any communication, which Adrian has addressed, and we've talked about putting together the SMS system and posting messages on the website, so I think we're doing that more effectively. In comparison to nearby cities like City of San Marino, I thought we did an amazing job. Throughout the summer, sometimes I'd go to San Marino, not to say anything about their recreation department, but there was really no signage, really nothing on the website when they were closed, and they were closed so many days. So the fact that we were able to hire on the spot, pivot to training instructors when we needed to, just to have the staffing, says a lot about our capabilities as a city, given our size, which is really small. So I think, this was a really good summer. And then towards the end of it, you were able to offer extended days too, which was fantastic because a lot of the pools were closed around the San Gabriel Valley. So to have those extra weekends be open for recreational swim was very useful, I thought.
Thank you.
Did anyone else use the aquatics center?
Rec swim, yeah. My daughter, she loved it. So yeah, thank you. And I was just curious with the approach of switching to training those that you found just to be reasonable people. That did you suffer any perception from the community about them being trained just for that, or not having had prior experience? Was there any sort of feedback that you had gotten?
We didn't receive any feedback, and hopefully our training was effective enough that the community didn't notice. Yeah. And not in a negative. Typically I've hired people who are already lifeguard certified, so it narrows that pool a little bit. So for example, when we were doing our applications, Anna's team was interviewing staff, and they started asking a question at the end if that person would be interested in swimming or learning how to swim or being a lifeguard. And some of them absolutely did not want to do that, and some of them said sure, whether that's because they wanted to say yes in an interview or because they were actually interested. But we ended up calling a bunch of them and scheduling quite a few interviews, and that is actually where we got several of the 4 staff who we ended up training throughout the summer. Nice. So they were great people, and we knew that we could train great people to be great lifeguards. So Kyle, our pool manager, and I spent a decent amount of time with those staff, so getting them up to speed. Most of them were already either on the swim team or had spent many summers at the pool, so they were at least familiar with the job or the facility. So getting them trained and acclimated was pretty straightforward, and that's something that Kyle and I can do. And we just spent the time doing it, and it seemed to work out pretty well. That's great. I mean, it's just great to maximize. The Smith Park pool is excellent, so it's really great to see it utilized fully. So good job. I'm glad you guys enjoyed. Thank you.
I did want to ask, for the swim classes at the end, you know how you get your report card? I want to say, is it possible to make it more clear on which parts of the training that the student should should pass. Because I had both my boys joined. They did twice, and unfortunately they didn't pass twice. But all of them were like, they were good, good, good. And maybe there was like 2 blank, and they're like, no, you didn't pass. So I was like, so was it just these 2? Like, do they need a perfect score? Like, it's very vague on what they need to improve on. So I don't know if there's a way to make that more clear so they know what to practice exactly and which one of those, training items they need to focus on more or more of a priority, if that's the case. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. There's a way we can make that more clear. Especially, you and I have different perspectives on it, so I can look at the sheet and be like, oh, he didn't do these 2. These are big ones. But from that perspective, we can absolutely adjust that report card.
Okay.
Depending on the level, there's a certain number of exit skills, we call them, for the swim lessons, that they have to be able to do those few things.
Okay.
So what our staff are doing is they're training in small increments to build up to those few skills. So typically, if someone has most of those checked off and only a few are not, those are the crucial exit skill items that aren't checked off. So we can definitely redo that layout a little bit and make that a little bit more clear, and even a little note. Exit skills assessment, didn't pass those 2 things, and then as a parent, you're looking at it and go, oh, they checked all of these off, but they didn't do the exit skills. That sounds pretty clear. And then you have something a little bit more targeted for your
Okay.
child to work on.
And
Yeah.
I know there's a ton of kids, so I'm sure it's hard for lifeguards, but maybe something after each class, if possible, to kind of say, okay, we worked on this, but they kind of struggled. Can you work offhand during free swim or somewhere? And we can do that. But again, I understand there's a ton of kids, and I'm sure it's hard to remember them all.
There might be a way to coordinate that a little bit. It's easier than you think in a 2-week cycle to remember the kids you had in your level. 2 weeks later, it gets a little bit trickier.
Okay.
But in that moment, when they've been with you every day, it's a little bit easier to have that moment. So whether it's a note on the report card or a quick one-on-one with a parent, or making sure that staff are aware or parents are aware that there's absolutely a minute to seek out our staff right after to go over those things.
Yeah, that's what I had to try to do, is jump in real quick before the next class, because the next class is starting, so I really quickly try to remember what is told, or what they need to work on. So
It can go pretty quickly. It might be more effective and efficient to make a note on the report card, whether it's the exit skills and then a follow-up note, and then make sure our pool manager and staff are aware that parents might be coming up with questions, and we can be prepared to answer those better. Absolutely.
okay, sounds good.
That's all I have. Are there any PR efforts lined up for this? Like, for example, say 2 students increased their swimming skills, and then we started communicating that. So now, looking long-term, for example, more kids are more interested, and then even with the staff, they're more interested to be part of it because, oh, wow, this is actually something that helps the kids. Is something like that?
We haven't planned specific marketing efforts for next summer, other than planning them to happen. As we get closer, I try to wait until I know what the staffing situation will be. And then from there, I know where I can put those staff, whether it's we have staff available all summer for swim lessons, or we can target special events or public swim. As this summer taught us, we have to kind of have that flexibility going into it, because sometimes we'll have a nice full staff, but not everybody's available for every swim lesson or things like that. So once we have a good, solid understanding of what our staffing situation will be, we can then finalize our swim lesson or our aquatics program schedule throughout the summer, which is another reason to do all those things earlier. So then as we're getting together our Discover San Gabriel guide for the summer, we already know where we're at. And then from there, we can target those marketing efforts much better. But using things like that, like success stories of the past, or children jumping off the slide and having a great time are always great ones to market, and getting our PIO team over there to get some fantastic photos will help with that.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, the demand for swim lessons is overwhelming. There's, if anything, long waits for all the classes. It's just the staffing part of it. It's kind of tricky to figure out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was thinking to market that so that even staffing would want to be part of it. So it becomes more of a holistic approach. Because even if we would all of our kids would want to go, and then even, can you imagine the staff or whoever would want to be part of the staff would want to be part of it because they see, oh, these kids are doing so well, et cetera, something like that. So maybe that's a good 2-prong approach, right?
I like it. There's certainly a number of our lifeguards who joined us because they were on the San Gabriel Seagulls, or they were here taking swim lessons before. So quite a few of our staff grew up at this pool and then decided they wanted to work at it and never left. Our pool manager is one of them. He's been here forever, both as a participant and now as our pool manager. So there's certainly some room with that, even on our existing staff, where we can use that approach to talk to them in our marketing efforts. Absolutely.
Another obvious motivating factor is pay rate. How do we compare with the local cities and the LA County in terms of pay?
We have recently done a salary study, and I see Matthew getting ready because he's much more intimately aware of the specific numbers on that. So if you have a comment there, I'll defer that one to you.
So we've had extensive departmental level discussions about the pay rates, not just for aquatics, but for other part-time staff. So we'll be meeting with HR to see how feasible it is to reevaluate what they're currently getting paid, to either make it on par or slightly above other cities. We don't typically make it a habit within the city of San Gabriel to be, leaps and bounds above other cities, just because we are smaller in nature. So we don't necessarily want to exceed Pasadena in what they're paying employees. But we definitely want to make sure that they're getting paid what the job reflects and what the market is reflecting.
Is it currently in line with Arcadia, San Marino, or?
Our lifeguards are not in line with
In
that.
line, okay. So that might be something that we can address. A former commissioner here, Commissioner Cabot, had looked into facilities too. Do we have a budget for next year in terms of upgrading any of the parts of the aquatic center?
So the roofing will be getting addressed first out of all of the other ones. And then we are looking for other smaller projects that we can do to increase the functionality of the pool. And I'm going to probably pronounce it wrong, but one of them is the strand trawl that actually does the chemicals. So right now there's a mixture of kind of staffing that are monitoring and doing actual testing versus what the machine should be doing for staff. So the hope is to get a newer machine that will do all of that for the staff. And there's less kind of back and forth and readjustments. And it makes it more efficient so that it's not over pumping chemicals and then having to flush it out if it over pumped it. So those are the things that we've kind of experienced over the last several years. The sand filter also needs to be replaced, but that's a much larger ticket item. It's also logistically a lot more challenging, but to directly answer your question, the roof will be hopefully addressed within the next couple months. Now that we're entering the rainy season, that may have to be delayed until after the rainy season, but hopefully we can squeeze that in. And then we'll also be looking at like locker room partitions that are not just an open space, right? It was built during an era where that was kind of the status quo. So removing some of the benches and actually putting in partitions. So that'll be phased in throughout this fiscal year and next fiscal year.
I would also suggest throwing plumbing on that list if
Yes.
possible, because a lot of the toilets tend to run over. It might just because the plumbing is from 50 years ago.
Yes. So that is definitely one of the larger items that is on the list. It'll just happen after some of these because the entire deck has to be ripped up and then the plumbing done, and then the deck, the cement around the pool will get redone, and then the plaster would all get done at the same time. So unfortunately, the pool would have to be closed for several months, and we have a very short window to do it because we don't want to displace the high school, because since we are their home swim team, where they have their games and their practices. So hopefully we'll be able to squeeze that in within the next couple fiscal years.
Okay, great.
Anything else from me? All right. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any other reports?
Can you go to the next one? Thank you. Thank you. All right. So our most recent one will be the movie screening and panel discussion. It'll be a movie called Dealing with Dad. It is geared towards persons 18 years of age and older, just due to some suggestive language. It is a really powerful movie. There's a lot of emotion in the movie, a lot of intergenerational dynamics that some are subtle and some kind of slap you in the face, but that's kind of the purpose of the movie, is to get a lot of those items brought to the surface in hopefully a way that is a bit more digestible and a bit easier to talk to than just going to a doctor or psychologist who's going to kind of talk specifically about what you need to address. There may also be items that you may not know that you need to address until after you've listened to the panel discussion. So it's really meant to be a very approachable way for people to tackle a lot of the items that are addressed in the movie. The panel will consist of the Healing and Justice Center, the writer and director of the movie, Tom Huang, and a representative from the Chinatown Service Center who also provides our case management services. So it's a very well-rounded panel. The last time I checked, we had a little over 20 people registered, but that was a week and a half ago. So hopefully my goal is 50. It's not one of those events where you want a ton of people. We want people to feel comfortable to, come up to the mic and ask the panel questions that may have arisen throughout the movie or during some of the pre-prompted questions that the panel will be answering. There'll be light refreshments as well, and it's from 10 a.m. till 1 here in the council chambers. Anyone have any questions on that event? The Fall Fun Festival, one of our annual events, will be hosted in the Mission District on October 25th from 5 to 9 p.m. It'll have a costume contest, haunted zone, which are now available for registration. They believe registration opened on the 1st. The haunted zone will operate as it did last year, where it's kind of like a fast pass. If you have if you registered for a time slot, then you'll be able to just arrive at that time and then go right into the haunted zone. There'll also be food trucks as well as the trunk or treat and game booths. Questions on that one? No? Okay. Feel free to just stop me if you have any questions. Turkey Trot, another one of our annual events, November 16th over at Vincent Lugo Park. All of the marketing already has a rain date, which is the following Saturday. In the case that we have to cancel it, hopefully not. But otherwise, it will go as planned. The holiday tree lighting with the Taste of San Gabriel will look, for the most part, the same as it has in years past. Well, I guess last year was the first year we had the Taste of San Gabriel component. The goal is to have additional vendors. So if you know of a local business that you think might be interested, Jackie Vilvaso, our recreation coordinator, will be taking care of the Taste of San Gabriel component. So we can have her reach out to them and hopefully garner their interest. It is a great opportunity for local restaurants to share their cuisine with the local community, especially if they're just starting out. And all we ask is that they bring 500 small bites, so not full meals, just a little taste, literally, of what they have to offer. And it can be their signature item or maybe a new item that they're trying. And then we really want them to bring out as much marketing materials as they can. So whether it's a pamphlet or a menu or a business card or little giveaway items, that's what we really want to see this year. That way it's as impactful as possible. Last year, we had all of those booths out of food within the first hour, some of them even sooner than that. So the goal is to have them bring more food and more booths because it obviously worked, right? People really wanted to see what these businesses had, and it's free food, so of course that draws people on its own. The holiday tree lighting component, the ceremony starts at 7. There'll be a visit from Santa as usual, and then various local community groups will be performing as well. And then the tree gets lit right after the tree lighting ceremony. The Lunar Lantern Festival.
I had a
Yes.
question.
Mhm.
In regards to Taste of San Gabriel, what was the requirement last year for the vendors to bring? Was it 500 too, or no?
It was 200 for
Okay.
last year.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're over doubling the ask.
And I know it might be difficult, but I remember last year it was pretty dark. Is there anything that's going to be done to kind of brighten it up? Like even the vendor, like everything was pretty dark. So yeah, I don't know if there's something you can do in regards to that. And then also in regards to the holiday tree lighting, I know it was a blast. A lot of kids loved the foam. Are they going to add another one?
Yes.
Okay.
We purchased 3 that year, but the remote wasn't working for the 3rd one.
There was 2 shooting at the
There
same?
was 2 shooting at the same area.
Okay.
So it was a little too congested all in one space, which wasn't the plan.
When it went off, it was just a mad rush, and it was pretty bad. Like,
Yeah.
people were pushing and shoving, and
Yeah.
it was just like, so I was wondering if you guys were going to have another location, so kind of spread out the
Yeah.
madness of the rush.
Most definitely.
Okay.
It was definitely not intended to be that way, so I apologize that it turned out that way. But they were supposed to be staggered throughout the kind of southern portion of the park,
Okay.
not to be pointing at the same location.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's all I wanted to ask and point out.
perfect.
I think the city council had said they wanted to revamp the look and feel. Is there anything that we're doing differently this year versus last year?
Not this year compared to last year. Last year was our revamp, so we'll keep it relatively the same. We're adjusting the layout to make it flow a little bit more and make sure that there's less lines at the train rides, adding one or two more kids components, and that way they have an alternative than the train ride. So if they don't want to wait in line, they don't have to. But in addition, hopefully the layout will address some of those issues. And then next year, we'll look at kind of switching some things up. So maybe we don't do the train ride next year, we swap it out with something else.
How do we think about the photo op with Santa Claus? Because that's usually a really popular draw for families.
Yeah.
Is there a new ticketing system involved, or?
We don't have a ticketing system. We can certainly implement one. There's still ample time to do so. We can do it similar to the haunted zone, where it's kind of like a fast pass type of situation. There's still time to put that on all of the marketing materials, with the exception of what's in Discover San Gabriel, but that's just one item. If the commission thinks that would be beneficial, we're open to any of those items.
Did anyone bring their kids last year to sit with Santa?
I brought them, but that line was insane. I was not going to wait. The same with the train ride. They were both extremely long, so it's just if any way to make that better, or the ticketing system does sound like a good idea. Yeah, for sure I'd do it, but yeah, I didn't partake in either of them. It was just too long.
Sure.
I attended Monterey Park's version of this last year with my daughter, and they had a similarly incredibly long line for the train. So I imagine that's a difficult one to handle. Going back to the food vendors, so from what I understand, it's you want restaurants more so to be the participants than the alternative would be like pop-up shops like you would see more at a farmer's market who are selling food because you want the food to be free.
Right.
Got it. So the goal is to try to, of course, you're more than doubling their servings, but you're also trying to bring in more restaurants. And how are restaurants finding out about this opportunity now?
Sure. So by the end of this week, they'll have a letter mailed to them with the registration application, and then we'll also be leaning on our economic development department to assist getting that in their e-newsletters, and they're aware of it as well. It is definitely difficult to try and get the engagement, but that's what we did last year. I don't know that I'm stuck in just doing that. So any other ideas? I was just what came to mind, what staff had in mind at the time was everyone got an individual mailing, so that way it was in hand, in person. And then the ones that staff were aware of, they also made personal connections. They can't do that for every single restaurant, unfortunately, but some of the ones that have been here a little longer and a little bit more established, they started with those ones last year. So they can branch out to some of the newer ones this year.
Nice. It's open across cultures, I imagine. Doesn't matter what type of food it is. Just bring any type of food. It just has to be a bite.
Yep.
It seems very reasonable. I wouldn't be surprised to see that more of the not struggling newer restaurants would probably be really interested. So I don't have ideas, but I'm very curious to see how it turns out.
Sure. Thank you.
Are you working, because it sounds kind of like a community development department event, are you working with them to draw in more vendors?
We will work with them as soon as the mailing goes out. We'll see if they have any additional ideas as well.
For the city of Arcadia, when they do their holiday tree lighting, they actually charge families for it, $22, I think, which includes food and the photo op. Have we ever thought that we might want to charge families for that
Sure.
in San Gabriel?
Typically, council direction is to provide free to low cost. There's been a comment even of not having food trucks and finding lower cost alternatives to that. So I'm not sure that they would respond as well to a paid version of what we're currently offering. But I could see how that would certainly limit the lines and make it a bit more controlled that way. So we can certainly bring it up with them and see if they'd be open to that. But it would be a more substantial change that I wouldn't feel comfortable making at the departmental level.
As it is, I mean, I think I've mentioned before that for myself, you know, now almost a family of 5, the food trucks are pretty expensive. So it's, you know, and $22 per person is also expensive. So it just depends on what the objectives are for this event. If it's really just to get the community to come out and meet your neighbor, you know, then it might be better if it was free as it is now, versus trying to just encompass all the costs and make sure everyone has a really good time, the lines aren't too long, because the lines are very, I wasn't around last year for the Winter Fest or for the holiday tree lighting, but the year before and the year before that, the lines are pretty intense when it comes to the photo ops. But otherwise, it's, you know, it's good to have. Are we still doing the fire truck ride, you know, where they go around St. Gabriel?
Yes.
Okay.
That'll still be happening.
Okay.
Any other questions on those ones?
I just have a comment based on what Commissioner was saying. It just makes sense to me for the highest attended lines, the train, the Santa. Maybe those are charged events. To go to an event and get free food and get to hang out and see a lighting, like, that's incredible. So to maybe have something that you opt into financially, maybe that would help with some of the lines, to some small degree.
Similar to like a carnival where you're not paying for everything, just for what you want. Okay.
I had a question in regards to the little, I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but the vendors who go to like the last holiday tree lighting, there was the vendors with the balloons, the light up balloons, and they were everywhere. Are they just showing up and they just sell?
Yeah,
And
we don't.
We can't?
We do not invite them.
Okay.
We typically ask them to leave. If they're not causing a huge ruckus, PD will allow them to stay. We can politely ask them to leave, but ultimately it's the police department that will need to
Only ask
escort them
'cause-
out if they warrant it.
Yeah, they seem really pushy at times. Like when you're just walking through, they're just consistently asking you to buy, and then they talk to my youngest son trying to get him to buy it, and then he kind of turned to me. He's like, "Oh," so they're trying to make the sell on him to push to me, and I was like, "No,"
Right.
and then they kind of just stood there still. So it's kind of, I understand they're trying to take advantage of everyone there, and the kids love it, the light ups, but I don't know, it's a little much. There was a lot of them. There's like a whole army of them out there. So
Well, we can certainly be a bit more strict on that this year. But we get mixed feedback too. Sometimes residents are like, "Yeah, no, the vendors are great. We love the little things that they sell."
Yeah.
But that's good to know that they're not necessarily as passive as they should be in that type of environment, especially when it comes to the youth that they're now kind of pushing the item on as well. Not something that we would support.
yeah, and especially if they're charging at a free event where we're offering a free event, but then they're over there charging for everything. So I don't know. Like I said, I understand the kids love the balloons. They were, it's a hit, but they can be a little pushy at times too. So.
Or maybe it could be an opportunity to ask them for permits. And then now it's another revenue generating thing and we get to control it.
So if you want to sell something, then you gotta, get the permit, get something back from them, I guess. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not residents here, so I'm okay with charging.
We could also sell those balloons too. Have we thought about that?
I haven't, but now that you're mentioning it, it is a good idea. That's true. Beat them at their own game.
There could be a security concern too, because you do, and there are lots of those types of vendors who will come, and they're not vended. And,
Right.
if you're just a resident in the city of San Gabriel, even if you're not, you would think that they might be something official.
Sure.
Because they're selling something
Right.
there. So they might, I don't know if there have been any security problems in the past, but that could be just an area that we look into and make sure it doesn't happen.
Definitely.
Yeah, I guess, for example, the permits would be a good way to weed them out, or us doing it ourselves, so that now we can push out those who aren't part of the city.
Part of the challenge, though, is it's an open area. So you would have to fence the entire area in to really control who goes, and who, what types of vendors
The
are coming
balloons
in.
are really well lit, so you're gonna know who's selling it. You're like, oh, hey, you got your permit? Okay, cool. Oh, you don't? Okay, you gotta go.
And we can have that conversation with the police department ahead of time that, like, hey, this was an issue last year. Let's be on the same page before we enter the event. Because if they're on the lookout and the police chief has already kind of disseminated that information to his staff, that makes the coordination a little bit easier on the day of.
That's right. Because I think, for example, in the 4th of July event, that security was pretty good. The police department was very active and everyone else, so I thought it'd feel very safe to be in there. So maybe something that they could apply to in this event.
Well, actually, speaking of which, we also had the July 4th event after our last meeting with the drone show. And I remember seeing Commissioner Brontes here, too, at that event. How did that shake out?
Yeah.
Did we get above the numbers that we were expecting to come out?
So that's my next slide.
Oh, okay, great. There you go. Nice
It was
segue.
perfect. I'll just wrap up Lunar Lantern Festival, and then
Sure.
we'll kick right into July 3rd. So February 1st and 2nd will be the dates of the event. It'll be here in the Mission District from Broadway all the way to Mission Road on Mission Drive. From the layout that we've seen thus far, it looks like it will be quite a large event. There will be a carnival component in the parking lot, as well as a variety of food vendors and other activities for kids and families to participate in. There'll be a small hub over at Plaza Park, so really utilizing the entire floor plan. And then the city is partnering with World Journal on this event, so they are doing the majority of the sponsorships and coordination of all of the booths and all of that. Move to the next slide. All right, so the upcoming, I guess it wasn't the next one, I apologize, it's in there somewhere. The senior dance, so we've had quarterly senior dances that our recreation specialist Desiree has been putting on in conjunction with Jackie Vilvaso, the recreation coordinator. The seniors are very vocal about what they want, so they don't leave us guessing. They are very much into more ballroom dancing type music, so that's been a bit challenging when it comes to finding live entertainment. It's kind of a dying art form with live entertainers, and if you find someone, they're usually very expensive in relation to a top 40 cover band. So that's been a bit challenging, but otherwise staff have been doing a great job of making sure that it's well decorated, that there's a DJ there, that depending on if it's inside or outside, that there's a dance floor. The upcoming one is the Ghoulish Gala, and it will be both inside and outside, again with a DJ and extensive decorations and refreshments for them as well. And it is a completely free event. The new one will be the community art exhibition. So it's spurred off of trying to showcase our senior art group. If you've never seen them, they are fantastic. They are professional level artists. I can draw a stick figure and that's about it. So I need to take a few lessons from them. They all help each other out during the class. Some of them have either taken lessons or they're just naturally artistic. And so they've created a really strong knitted community on their Fridays over at the Recreation Center. And so we wanted another outlet for them in a more formal space. But at the same token, we wanted to be sure that we brought in enough people, enough participants. So Desiree will be reaching out to local artists or local art studios to see if they want to have their art showcased at the event. It'll be hosted at the Mission Playhouse lobby. And again, hoping to attract a broader audience, and that'll be open to the general public to come and partake in that. Sales won't be able to happen on site, but people can take business cards home or anything like that and contact the artist at a later date should they want to do so. But hopefully it'll be a good mix-up, some exposure for the Mission Playhouse to the local community who maybe isn't looking to go to a show but wants to see the Mission Playhouse, similar to Dia de los Muertos, where it's a free event, and they can still see the historic Mission Playhouse in a different light than you would at a theater performance. And then the next sports that we have coming up, so that's the sports over at Jefferson Middle School, are soccer and basketball. Both of those will be, there'll be a girls team and a boys team for each of those, so a total of 4 teams. A plus side, which I don't think we've highlighted just yet, is the San Gabriel Unified School District is now purchasing the jerseys for those. So in the past, we were having the students or parents purchase the jerseys for the students at about $45 a jersey. Whereas now with the district purchasing the jerseys, they'll be checking them out at the beginning of the season and then returning them at the end of the season, and then they'll be recycled for the next year. And they're very high-end reversible jerseys, so we really wanted the students to feel part of a team and feel like they are on par with the other cities that they're playing. And I believe Anna mentioned it, but now the students participate in the SMAF League, which is much more on par with what coaching style and level that we have. So we have recreation leaders that coach similar to the other cities compared to when we were playing district-run league, district-run teams. You may have a professional coach or someone who has extensive coaching experience compared to our recreation leaders, and additional funding that would be available. And so the skill set was just not at the same par and didn't lead to a very enjoyable experience for the students. So Jackie and Anna have made a huge change in that, and so far the parents have responded really well to the change. The after-school program will continue as has been planned, still with having their monthly special functions. And the new program is being offered, the Theater Basics and Acting 101 is offered directly through the Mission Playhouse. So the first session will be led by the production operations supervisor and the front of house coordinator. They both have extensive theater experience. So a very entry-level introduction to a theater. They'll be seeing kind of all of the behind-the-scenes items that you wouldn't ordinarily get to see from people with extensive experience. The program will wrap up with, the program will wrap up with a very small performance on the Mission Playhouse stage. So they'll get that kind of stage-like experience, but not having to put on a 2-hour production. It'll be between an 8 to 10 week course. The final details are still being developed. It'll be in the winter version or winter edition of Discover San Gabriel.
Are you targeting the youth with this program?
Yes. Yeah, so it's a teen program.
Teen, okay.
I believe the ages are 11 to 18. Yeah, so not the littles, but still kids. Yep. So based off of how this turns out, so if it's no enrollment, if it's high enrollment, that'll kind of dictate what's offered in the future. And then finally, the 3-on-3 basketball league through Breakthrough Sports. We've offered that year after year with extremely high enrollment. So we'll be offering that again in January. Next slide.
Just overall, for all the things that we do, have we seen a drop in enrollment? Either the, summer movies in the park or not Breakthrough Sports. I know that's really popular, but what do we think about enrollment and attendance? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we haven't really seen a drastic drop in anything. The only thing that we've had a drop in was the Roosevelt after school program, but that was just because there was too many conflicting options for people. There was options, AYC, the MIE program, so there were too many things to choose from. And so we removed that program, I believe, a year ago. But otherwise, attendance, we either have wait lists or the attendance is on par. I think Holiday Tree Lighting was a perfect example where attendance kind of skyrocketed above and beyond what we were expecting. Culture Fest was one that could still use some additional attendance, so there was a drop in there. But I think that's more of a branding and marketing issue of getting the word out on that event. it was also a brand new event. So, but other than that, our contract classes, some of them have dips in attendance, but Jackie does a good job of communicating with the instructor of, either we axe that class if it's just not doing well consecutively, or we rebrand it, or we adjust it slightly, or we pull something out of their repertoire of something that they could offer and see if it sticks. So that's pretty much how we're moving forward.
I'm excited about the new theater class. I think if you want a role model, it would be the city of Monrovia. They do an amazing job. It's been the same director for like 20 plus years. She's like known as the unofficial mayor of Monrovia, as the woman who runs their theater program. They don't have a community theater like us, but they do have a church that they use. And it's souped up. It's, you got lights, you got a beautiful stage, you have fog machines and whatnot. But, with this beautiful Mission Playhouse, and I think it's a great idea they're trying to use it. I think if you are able to get the word out, you're going to get a lot of kids from the surrounding cities who will come to this training. So I would say sometimes it takes like 1 or 2 years to develop the program, but finding the right person is going to make the difference.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate the feedback. And apparently my July 3rd slide got deleted, so I apologize. Luckily I have it all in my head. But so July 3rd, it was a Wednesday, the day before Independence Day. We had the drone show at 9 p.m. There was a two-part welcome ceremony. So we had various dignitaries that came and spoke from the district to representatives from the assembly member and congressional offices. Various community booths that were doing either games, activities, or giveaways, or crafts. Athens Services sponsored the event, so that was a huge contribution for that. Their main draw was the drone show. Obviously, it's the first in the region. Additionally, the security presence was something that we haven't done before due to the closed-off nature of it. All of our events, as you're familiar, are not, they're in the open street with multiple access points. So if an incident occurs, people can disperse, whereas in a closed-off environment, that's not necessarily the case. So that was the need for the additional security and all of the rules that were posted and the metal detectors, all of that was really to ensure the safety of the participants there. The ticketing went well. The ticketing system went down at the very beginning, so that was a hiccup. It was a brand new system. It was tested out, but unfortunately there were issues with Wi-Fi that were causing the hiccup. So now we'll know for next year to bring a jetpack and not rely on the district Wi-Fi. So that's an easy fix. The ending, when we were letting people in just before the drone show, there were people that were kind of storming the front, if you will, all at the very last minute. So instead of coming in 2 hours before, they were trying to get in right as the drone show was starting, which did cause kind of an overwhelming experience for both staff, the security guards, and the participants themselves, which wasn't ideal. So we'll be making adjustments next year to either do the cutoff sooner or increase marketing, something to where that doesn't happen again. Most likely the cutoff will be sooner. And what eventually happens is that between fire and the and police department and the security company, they have to decide what they feel comfortable kind of cutting off at. So it's not always just a number too, right? So it's how everyone has kind of situated themselves since there's not defined seating. So those, we noticed there needed to be a clearer chain of command, that it, police chief obviously takes precedence over even what I'm saying, even though it's the event that we're putting on. So those are things that we'll be communicating with staff ahead of time. That way they know who exactly is providing the direction in that particular instance. The additional item was the speaker system. So the point-to-point system was a little too far. So the very last speaker by the food trucks wasn't fully functioning, and then the one to the left-hand side by the community booths was a bit spotty. So again, easy fixes, but things that definitely need to be addressed for next year. That way you'll have the full festival experience, which is what the intention was. The additional feedback that we received was to have clear walking paths instead of trying to kind of zigzag your way through people. So that's certainly something that we can easily implement for next year. Additional feedback was syncing the music to the drone show, so in that way it makes it even more exciting. So when it's in transition, there's similar to a fireworks show when that big firework blast goes off. You have the music that pairs up with it. So those are things that we can certainly do moving forward. There were a few things like the syncing of the music that we didn't think would be as impactful until we got there, and you're seeing it live, and then you're realizing, no, we definitely should have had it synced up. And again, now that we have the time to plan all of those items, it'll be a lot more feasible. But other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns that you have over the event.
Just, what was the general reaction to the actual drone show? I know there were some competing shows,
Yes.
like the SpaceX launch
Yes.
that happened in the background. I wasn't sure if it was part of it. I thought it was really cool that you guys were able to get them to do that. But what was was it a short show? It was the
Yeah.
first time we've had it.
Yeah. So people do want a longer show. However, we'll need to confirm with the company, but I don't believe it's feasible to do a longer show since they're battery operated. They'd have to almost like switch out a fleet of drones in order to make that happen. But the length of the show is pretty standard across most drone shows. The response was positive about the actual drone show itself, other than the fact that they wanted it to be a little bit longer and the music. But otherwise, people really enjoyed it. Those that couldn't get in were kind of stacked along the fence line because they could still see it above the building. So that was nice that at least they could enjoy it, even if they weren't inside of the event space. But yes, I hope that answers your question.
I think the benchmark for a lot of folks is Disneyland. It's like, we're never going to be able to compete against
Yes,
Disneyland's
yes.
drone show,
Yes.
right, in terms of quality and time and programming.
Yes. Cost-wise, that's a big difference.
And also, you have to pay for Disneyland, whereas you don't have to pay for this show.
Right.
I thought it was a short and sweet event. It would have been great if it was a little bit longer because it was rather small. The firework, we've never had a fireworks show before, so we have nothing to compare it against. It's probably really expensive to kind of increase it by another 5 minutes. It's a 10-minute show, is that right?
It's 8 to 10 minutes.
8 to 10
Yeah.
minutes, yeah. So if we had the budget, it'd be nice to increase it, but if we don't, I guess that's what we have. Yeah.
I think in general it was we had a positive experience.
Good.
I'd say even the things that you mentioned that are for improvement, they're great. For me personally, even with my family, it was smooth sailing. From what I understand is, considering that this is the only drone show, at least in the region, and for us to have that magnitude of an event, it was managed fairly well. And I think it was, for those who came in late, I didn't even notice it because we did come in early, but I think it's also for them to understand, hey, you just can't go in last minute, right? You have to understand that this is the repercussion of coming in late. But also on our end, like what you said, could be earlier communication, hey, we have a cutoff, etc. So, and I think you're able to already identify that. Maybe one thing that I noticed is the presence of very few food trucks, right? Because it probably will take you 30, 45 minutes to line up for one. So I was thinking maybe if you had maybe 5, 6 more, it'll be easier. And people were stuck to, okay, let's just choose this because it's the shortest one, even if that's not the one that you really liked. But in general, I think pretty good feedback, especially for those points, again, that you mentioned. They're very good, like the pathways, the speaker system. There was some delay because at least you guys understood that. And for example, the events, maybe just some specific points on where one, you know how you had small events like, for example, the watermelon eating contest, for it to be more specific, like it'll be in this part of the, in terms of communication. But overall, I think it was a pretty good event. So.
Yeah, I just want to echo what both of them have said. It's well managed and everything. Yeah, unfortunately, 10 minutes was really short. It's like, if it's going to be 10 minutes, is it possible for them to do more little, pictures or something more? It felt like there was maybe 5 things, and that was kind of it. Yeah, something. It was, yeah. And then considering if it was 10 minutes, I would imagine all the drones would light up. I know there were some that were not working, and then at the last one, the last drone, I'm like, oh no, it's falling down. So, I mean, if it's going to be 10, I don't know. I just expect a little bit more. So, I don't know. If I would have shown up when it opened, I might have been disappointed waiting that long. But I did come kind of, I forget, maybe 30 minutes before it started. So, I didn't, that heat was too much. It was hot. But yeah, obviously, I'm sure the cost would be a lot more 10 minutes. But if we can just at least do some more images, I guess, within that 10 minutes, if possible, something a little bit more. But yeah, that space, it actually wasn't SpaceX, it was another company. But yeah, I was recording and I was like, what is this? Is this part? So, but yeah, overall it was a good experience. And like I said, it looked well managed, and your recommendations that you've noticed too were good, like, the walk paths and everything. But everyone was, kind when they're walking by and everything, so there's no issues there. So, yeah, it seemed like a good event.
Just to clarify the costs for that, I know there was a lot of back and forth about whether or not the city council wanted to spend, I think, $45,000. Did it just cover the drone show, the $45,000, or does it cover the entire event?
Correct. The drone show is just the 45,000.
Okay. And are they thinking about renewing that for next year, plus inflation?
As far as we know, it's still a go for the drone show next year.
Okay. Okay.
Same company, or are
Pardon
you
me?
guys?
Yeah, same company. I believe it's actually already booked for
Oh, wow,
July
okay.
3rd. The same company.
Good evening, Commissioners. I've been in contact with the drone company, and they are looking at, I've asked, again, as Matthew addressed, the drones are what the drones are. So time frame wise, they are not able to do a longer show, just because that's the capability of drones. They are looking at options, though, as to whether or not they could add some lights, laser type component, and whether or not that could be added to it. So that's something we are working with them on, but we are booked for next year.
Is there a local orchestra or local band from Gabrielino High School? And we don't have that many high schools in San Gabriel, but maybe they could be
Yeah.
the live performers.
Yeah, so there are. I believe we actually reached out to them this last year, but the hard part is it's summer, so trying to get them kind of to reconvene
Sure.
for summer is the difficult part.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about this? So in terms of, so we do a lot, as you can tell, right? We're just a small department. One of the other things that we do is Ride SG Plus and Ride SG. So how is that rideshare program coming along? I think I heard that there was, and I've actually been on a rideshare recently. We switched from paper to an app. I think that one of the council members was also very supportive of that. How is that system working out?
So it's been well received. We have, it's transitioned from Dial-A-Ride to the Ride SG Plus for those that are 62 years of age and older and persons with disabilities residing in the city of San Gabriel. Now, it goes 5 miles outside of the city, so that takes a large amount of time to get that one person from, let's say, here in San Gabriel to Pasadena. So it limits the amount of rides that can be taken if we were just transporting people around San Gabriel. So you'll see that we do have some failed search results that are higher than average because essentially the demand is exceeding what the system can handle. So when people are on the ride, they're enjoying it. the kind of troubles that we're having now is that people are having a harder time booking a ride because there just isn't a driver or a van available at that time. The app itself has been fine. There was, I believe last week, there was an hour-long shortage in the system to where essentially everything just was inoperable. So that did cause some disruption, and we've already addressed it with both the RideCo and TransDev team to be sure that there's better communication with us as well as the customer base about kind of how that affects them. And we continue with the relationship because we're really only the second organization that TransDev has offered it through. The first organization was strictly a brand new program, so they weren't trying to integrate existing customers into a new program. They also don't have the plus component, right? So every customer receives the same level of service regardless of whether or not you're a senior or a person with a disability. So that makes it much easier to run than when you have the additional distance or you have the additional parameters that we have to provide the extra level of service. Given all of the different factors and troubleshooting that we've had to do to bring it to where it's at, I would say it's operating at the highest capacity, and when they're on it, they're great. But again, with that said, there's still a lot of room for growth in order to continue servicing additional residents or visitors, because that's another goal of the program is if you're staying at the Sheraton or you're staying at the Hilton, you should be able to hop on Ride SG and go to a local restaurant or go to the Mission for sightseeing or something like that.
Well, if I can just clarify, because I think that currently happens, because if you don't have to be 62 to use the service,
Right.
actually.
Correct.
Right? You
Right.
just have to be within the city of San Gabriel
Right.
limits. And I think, yes, there's a lot of demand. So are we thinking about adding more vans or?
Sure. So there'll be an update that'll be going to council in November. So they'll have a kind of a list of options to choose from. One of them wouldn't necessarily start with purchasing vans. It would be more driver hours. Because we have currently 4 vans that the city owns and then 3 that rotate in operation throughout the day. One is a backup, but, as one needs to be serviced, then they all rotate that way. So it's not necessarily a vehicle issue at the moment. It could eventually become a vehicle issue, but right now it's more of a number of driver hours would be the first step.
Oh, so it's not running 40 hours a week currently?
So it runs 7 to 7, but not all 3 vehicles will run at the exact same time.
Oh, I see.
So at one hour there might be 1 vehicle, or another there might be 2, and then 3. So the peak hours, which are like 10 a.m. and then 5 p.m., there would be like 3 vehicles on the road. But maybe at 7 a.m. there's only 1 vehicle on the road. But in order to kind of maximize the vehicles that we would have, we would need to increase the number of driver hours, which then comes at an increased cost.
Have the other commissioners used Ride SG at all? No? So.
That's good. Get your steps.
Yeah, I think it's such an important program because you wanted to address mobility issues, which was important during the pandemic when the rideshare program was discontinued. And you want to get less, cars on the street. You want people to move around. It's good for the environment. So I think it's wonderful. But yeah, it is, it's such a popular service. I feel like sometimes when I'm trying to get a ride, I can't necessarily get a ride. And I'm sure it's just a matter of, do we have the budget to increase the hours like you had mentioned? So it'd be good to see what the city council comes up with. If there's something that we can do in terms of providing feedback towards that,
Yeah.
let us know.
Great. Thank you.
And I was looking at all of the events lined up, and I really like how we're segmenting per demographic or even the age range. I just wanted to suggest maybe if we could use some of them for some of the other programs, for example, and I'm not sure if this is the avenue for it, like the Youth Ambassador Program, like the Acting 101, if anyone would be signing up, because we're starting to promote that, right? Like, for example, put in there are you interested in to be a youth ambassador, learn more, stuff like that. I don't know if we could use these because we're already running the signups and they've already been planned out for it to be in sync with all the other efforts. So now, even for example, July 3rd event, we're starting to promote there, et cetera, you know what I mean? So
I'm sorry, there's a bit of an echo on your mic for some reason. I'm not sure why. And maybe it's just where I'm sitting that there's too many speakers converging, so I apologize. But I think the goal is to leverage the contacts from these different registrations. Okay, so we do that. Adrienne does a great job of importing. If someone's registered for classes, like quarterly, she'll take the bulk of those new registrations and dump it into our constant contact newsletter. So that's ways in which she's able to kind of cross-promote items. And then, of course, Discover SG is the other kind of cross-promotional that we have. But were you referring to more of like specific?
or maybe more active, because if it goes after the fact, because for example, for someone signing up, which means you already capture that, and they're willing and they're actively thinking about that effort, and for them to see a checkbox there, for example.
Got it.
So now they're more, okay. They're more engaged in that question versus an after the fact email, right? So
Yeah, we actually can do that with our current registration software. It's like a registration option, and then they can click yes or no on the option. So that's an easy fix. Yeah, thank you for that.
thanks.
Well, I think this is a good segue into discussion of the annual work plan. Are there any other updates from the staff?
Yeah, just the last one, which is the RFP for the recreation management software provider. So that went out. We've already received questions. We've responded to the questions. Those were posted on the 4th. And then the deadline to submit is this Thursday for the proposals. And then the following week is when interviews will be hosted. Rebecca, myself, and Chris Hewland, the Mission Playhouse manager, will be sitting on the panel. And again, just in case I haven't already mentioned it, the goal is for it to replace our current registration software, as well as the parking over at the Mission Playhouse and the concessions over at the Mission Playhouse. So again, converging a few more items, kind of reducing the duplication of efforts. And then hopefully we can find a vendor that has additional add-ons, if you will, that we don't have right now. For example, integration with the lighting system must go for the field lighting, to where you don't have to go to 2 different systems to schedule the lighting. You just put it in as a contract, and then it does the work for you, reducing the amount of staff time that's spent on all of those functions. So that's the goal. We'll see how many come back in with proposals. I think we had 5 submit questions, which is usually a pretty good sign. So hopefully all of those actually submit proposals based off of our responses. And then it will be going to council in December to approve the contract. And then the full launch will happen it'll go live end of February, just in time for the spring registration. So that'll be our kind of guinea pig session, so that between December and February, staff and the new recreation software will come up with a plan to get the information out to participants, that way, or residents, so in that way they're not caught off guard when they go to register and they have to create an account and go through all of that step. Hopefully they can do that before they're interested in enrolling in a program.
That's great. So it's not a lowest bid RFP. It's like a best value is how you're going about it to conduct interviews afterwards. That's great. Well, hope it goes well.
Thank you.
So moving on to discussion of the 2024 annual work plan, we kind of talked about it in terms of the Youth Ambassador Program. Commission members to discuss the items in the 2024 annual work plan. Do we have any public comments on the action item? Oh, should we discuss it first and then?
No comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the time for public comment on this item is now closed. And for us commissioners, we did receive update from staff that unfortunately, there wasn't a huge amount of participation, none actually, for the Youth Ambassador Program as laid out. Is this something that we would like to continue for next semester? Do we want to change the parameters of the program? Have we looked into how we could engage more youth in San Gabriel to be interested in this? So for instance, I know the library on Del Mar, they also have their own version of a teen youth ambassador program. Have we reached out to them to see?
No, I actually
know.
wasn't aware that they had a youth ambassador program, so that I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And you're referring to the San Gabriel Library,
The San
correct?
Gabriel Library, yeah, on Del Mar, next to the police station, or across the street from it.
How did you guys reach out to the youth?
Sure. So we put it in our monthly newsletter, I think a couple times. It also went over to the PIO, and that got pushed out through the citywide e-newsletter. I sent it over to the district, the representative that does like the enrichment programming, who has the contacts at all of the schools, for her to distribute that. And then I also sent it to the high school as well, in hopes that we could get some people there. I also sent it to the principal over at Mission High School. Actually, I apologize. I tried sending it to the principal over at Gab, but I didn't have a direct contact, so I submitted a submission form, and I don't recall hearing back. But hopefully it made it to their students via the district contact.
I don't know if the Gabrielino has the Parent Square app that Coolidge and Jefferson use, but that would have been, if they did get it, hopefully that pushed it to all the parents, and then they can, show it to their kids from the high school. Yeah, I don't know if they'd have it. I would imagine so. Oh,
From what I understand, they have like class representatives selected by the superintendent. So, I mean, my child is the class rep for Jefferson. I don't know if and she was selected by the superintendent, so they have one per class. I don't know if it's an opportunity for us to tap into that system.
I don't know. We get all the notifications to Parent Square when there's an event or something at the schools or something they need people to sign up for. So my son's not in Gabrielino, not till next year. So I imagine they're still on the same system. That's how they send alerts to parents and this and that. So yeah, not having a contact like Gabrielino, it's kind of odd. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I think if they would have sent it out, we probably would at least received one or two. So I don't know.
So you reached out to the school and they just never responded? Is that what
Correct.
happened? Do we have any joint programs with them? I know Jefferson Middle School, we have so many programs with them.
Yeah, we have a lot of programs at the elementary school and middle school level, but nothing at the high school.
Really?
Yeah, so that's it's kind of a shot in the dark, unfortunately, trying to make that connection. But this is a good first step. So if the commission does want to try it again, I'll make a more concerted effort to make a contact with them this time. I don't know that they do have a new principal, so I can certainly reach out to him and see if we can get the word out differently this time.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about hitting all the demographics, one demographic that we thought we didn't target successfully were the youth in this age range, which is why we came up with this idea for a youth ambassador program, which another commission used successfully. I think that commission is disbanded now or something like
Correct.
that. I forget. But how did they get their ambassador?
Sure. So I went through the same process for this one, so the same contacts and everything. The difference is that at the time the youth ambassadors were appointed, one of the commissioners was the school counselor over at GAB, so it was a very easy transition there.
Can we tap her again?
Yes, of course. So I can try again and see.
Because in some ways, I think we've overtaken some of the responsibilities of that commission that was disbanded. So this would be another way for youth to be participants of the discussions we have about the community and programs.
I don't know if the Gabrielino website, if you click on staff, I don't know if it lists their emails, but that'd be a good way to.
It didn't,
No,
unfortunately.
so you just submit.
Moved you to a contact form,
Okay.
which is what I tried, but it didn't work. So, but we'll certainly reach back out to them again. The former HERE commission member. There was another commission member that also was on the speech and debate team, or he led the speech and debate team. Excuse me. So a lot of the applicants came from the speech and debate team. So I can try again. I think the difference with like the speech and debate team students is that the commission was a bit more in their interest level than the Community Services Commission would be. So it may not yield the same results, but I am certainly happy to reach out to that contact and see if those students would be interested.
It seems like it may line up best with student government, just in particular, right? Like, I don't know, they called it AVID at my high school. If it's the same here, I would imagine that somebody within, you know, the political group on campus would be interested.
So does this mean, back to Matt's question earlier, we're really still pushing for this, right? Or it was your question, Chair?
What do we all think about it? I feel like not having someone at Gabrielino weigh in on this is sort of, right, that's our blind spot. So if maybe give it another try if it doesn't take too much effort, if it's just like 30 minutes. And I think a lot of the staff too are coming from Gabrielino, aren't they? The teenage staff that we have for some of our events. Or did they graduate from Gabriel? Because I remember
And
that
just
when
left, so she would have been the perfect person to ask.
Okay, because I remember when the prom came around, none of the staff showed up
You are
because they were
correct.
at
Yes,
prom.
yes.
So prom must be at Gabrielino,
Yes.
not at Jefferson.
Yep.
So if we can get them to pass out flyers too, just, put it on the bulletin board. Yeah, with the email addresses, I mean, it's what it is that you get one email address and it's the same format for all of the counselors.
I mean, generally, if I reach out to the district and say, hey, I need to contact someone at Gabarino, the district is pretty open about referring it over. I mean, I can try that on my own as well to see if I can get a contact. But
I have a question on the alignment with the movie screening event. And I know it's 18 and over, but the issues that you mentioned there was a pretty good spot on reason for that. I don't know if it's aligned with a bigger objective for this, because I don't know if this is an avenue to align this program with that. So for example, instead of movie screening something that's 18 and over, something that's teen level. So now they will have the discussion and then you can pinpoint who is more active, for example, in that event. Like, hey, would you want to be a youth ambassador?
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
this youth ambassador program is for ages 16 to 19.
so I think that'll fall in there too. Or, but like what I said, it's more of trying to find these avenues to align it, and then we could use that too.
Right, cross-pollinate, right?
Yeah.
That would make sense. So I guess what we're saying is that we want to give it another try, maybe set another deadline. Do we want that to happen by the end of this year, or should we move it to next year?
Because the idea was to have it line up with a semester, correct? So
Yeah.
that would start up again in January or something like this?
So we would probably
I would think
release
so.
it now and have a deadline of sometime in November, probably before they leave for Thanksgiving break.
Right,
yeah, if we can push it now, then
Yeah.
I'm for
okay.
it.
So I think we're okay with that. And if you need help reaching out to someone in Gabrielina, just reach out to
Okay,
us.
perfect. Thank you.
There's also that mission school too, right across from us. Commissioner
Mission High School.
Horta might be able to help us with
Yeah,
Mission High
I
School.
reached out to the principal.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did, okay.
Yeah.
But they're so small, right?
Yeah.
So it's, no, it should be Gabrielino. And was it also in the Grapevine too?
It
Did
didn't
we
make it to the
adver-
Grapevine.
Okay, so let's advertise there
Sure.
on the website.
I'll
you
have to see
know.
if there's space for the winter edition, because we're on our very last round of edits. But we'll see if we can squeeze
Yeah,
it in.
or
really
just on the
quick.
website. And
Yeah.
it should be, so is it, Adrian, would it be easy to just put it on the front page? Looking for youth ambassadors, this is the deadline.
We can add it to our main community services page, but we'd have to talk to the PIO to add it to the main.
Oh, I see. I see, I see.
It is prime real estate, yes.
Yeah, well, definitely on our page if we can, if we want people to actually take it seriously. And of course, the library too, I don't know if they actually were able to successfully recruit ambassadors, so that's also another kind of checkpoint.
Sure.
What did you do? How were you successful in this?
How are we selling it? So it's a youth ambassador program is the name of it, but are we selling it as recreation, community services, like, you know, what is the draw for a student to be a student ambassador? And maybe that's a question for the commission as much as it is for,
Well, I would think that if you're a junior, you'd want to participate because it looked good in college applications. That's the issue with pushing it out to January. Because you can't put on your application to UCLA that you were part of this youth ambassador program.
because applications end
December.
in December?
Yeah, for the UC system.
Yeah.
So juniors, right?
But it could be, you know, I mean, 16-year-olds, what is that, 11? Yeah, that's junior. Because it's, our program is for 16 to 19-year-olds. So if you're 16, you're in 11th grade. So, oh, I guess, yeah, I mean, if the juniors would be more inclined to do it then versus the seniors, because the seniors have to get their applications out. in the
Not saying the
fall.
seniors wouldn't, just have the experience.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, for sure.
I guess my question was more so, what do we want kids to apply for themselves? Like beyond just the application, like do they want to have input on the events that happen in their city? Do they want to be more involved in the youth programs, representing the youth for the youth program? Like, I don't know if when we're reaching out, like how are we trying to sell to students to like
That's right.
sign up at all?
I mean, I guess since we're communicating, it has to be what's in it for them, right? Or that kind of communication. And I don't know what we're telling them right now.
Does the application even have a section of like,
It
this
does.
is why
What's
it's
the benefit?
great for you?
Yeah.
It doesn't have a selling point,
I guess we
will
have to
say.
get to the application in the first place.
It's the hook here.
What was that?
Thank
What
you.
was the hook? I mean,
Right.
I think about it in terms of college applications, right? But yeah, there should be something else. I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, it could be the main thing. We're just probably not communicating it that way. You know what I mean?
Is there a civics class in Gabrielina High School? Probably not,
Unfortunately, I
right?
do not know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because that's another way is reaching out to that teacher.
sure.
Because someone who's interested in taking a class like that would be interested in, in student government and then, this program for the city.
Sure. No, that's a great one. But,
Okay.
I mean, we can add like a cover page to the cover page that's almost like a flyer that would say like join and this is what you're getting out of it type of thing. That's a bit more exciting than listing off what you'll be doing as a youth ambassador, if that's kind of
That's right.
the direction. Because I see the point, and that's people might be less inclined to apply for this than the previous youth ambassador because it was very clear what the commission did, and I think, still people don't know what I do for a living. So if they don't know what I do and it's my job, do they know what they're going to be doing as a youth ambassador?
You know what you do.
So, thank you.
We appreciate
You're right.
But so there might be some ambiguity there that they're not quite understanding.
Yeah, like if the front picture was a picture of one of the greatest events that we've thrown, and it's like,
Right.
maybe that's, I'm joining to be a part of the big events that happen in my city, or something like this.
Or they see just the title as, this is work for me versus fun. You know what I mean? So that's right. Very valid point.
Yeah, work on that. So marketing and for this program, do you think you'll be able to give us some this is October now. So the deadline would be November.
Correct.
So would we have a chance to look at the new marketing for it before next meeting, November 4th?
I can have two people without it being a serial meeting. So if you wanted to assign two people to be the people to give the final stamp of approval or edits along the way, we can do that.
I'm
Okay.
Your marketing, right?
yeah.
Commissioner
Okay with that,
Rodriguez,
yeah.
our marketing expert.
Commissioner
I'm
Lutz?
fine with even, like, if we were to just exchange emails about, I don't know, copy or,
Yeah.
I don't do any digital work or like,
At least
how to
communication.
make the front page look cute, but you know what I mean? So I feel like if we just had a little bit of discourse on it, even through email, I feel like,
Yeah.
but I don't know how that turns into an approval that it goes out.
Yeah.
I think as soon as the two of you, if you're looking to volunteer, if you're okay with it, then it would just go out.
Okay.
And then November 4th is when we actually see the final product, and the deadline would be the end of November?
So the deadline would be just before they go out for Thanksgiving break to give us enough time to add it to your agenda packet for the December meeting.
Right.
So it would be during the regular meeting.
I mean, if we could get something by the end of the week, at least start, because I feel like we're losing time, you know what I mean? And that's what, like 6 weeks off. So if we can get something at the end of the week, and then we'll just throw in suggestions or,
Yeah, we can offline about it,
Yeah.
before the end of the week.
yeah, I think Matt will just be emailing us.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, so moving on to other items, it is, we did have a very in-depth work plan that we had talked about, maybe when you guys were just joining us. Given that it's 8:15, do we want to go through each of those areas of the work plan and talk about?
May make a suggestion, sorry
Sure.
to interrupt you.
Uh-huh.
Given that the commission has changed and we're nearing the end of the year, you may want to table these items and take some time reviewing the items, and then we can develop the 2025 work plan at the next commission meeting. And it may just be that you're going to approve the exact same work plan, and then you can have a discussion then, or maybe the newer commission members might have a different idea as to maybe scrapping half of it and then adding in new ideas. But I'll turn it back over to the commission, but just know that that's an option, and we will need to put it on the agenda for next meeting to start working on the 2025 to approve it at the December meeting.
Didn't we talk about changing that? Because by the time you get acclimated, you have to change the work plan, and it takes several meetings to adopt the new work plan. I thought we had changed the process for it, so
Was it the timeline that we changed to where it wasn't calendar year?
I guess something like
Okay.
that, just so we could actually spend some time working on the work plan as
Sure.
opposed to constantly discussing the
Right,
work plan for the following year. There's certain things that we have to update. For instance, partnering with the HERE Commission. HERE Commission's not around anymore, right? But otherwise, I feel like most of these sections are pretty consistent with what we've done in the past, what we continue to want to do. So do we have to spend multiple meetings which we only meet once a month
Right.
to update this?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And ultimately, if there aren't a ton of changes, and if you wanted to set like a 6-month check-in on your work plan, that's just an ongoing work plan. It doesn't need to be an annual work plan. It could just be the commission's work plan, and then you check things off. And then maybe after 2 years, you feel like you accomplished the majority of the items on the work plan, then you could, start from scratch at that time. Or if at your every 6-month check-in, you're removing and adding things at that time, then maybe there won't be a need to scrap it, because it'll just be kind of an ever-evolving document.
Does the work plan have to be approved by the city council?
Per how it was written for the Community Services Commission, it doesn't technically need to be approved. If there was something that was like above and beyond your scope, or something where you were trying to add a program, then it would need to be approved by council. But if it's you're researching our current program offerings, or if you are looking for community outreach, I don't think that would be something too above and beyond what your scope would be, so that would be fine.
Okay, in that case, if there's nothing that's written in the city council, like the charter for the city, for instance, then I think we could be a little bit more flexible in terms of how we think about it. Not to prevent us from having valid discussions about changing the work plan, but it does take a lot of time to have to sit through these sessions, and, we've just approved it, and now we've got new commissioners, and we've got to approve another one, right? Does it feels the same way to you, Commissioner Brontes?
Yeah.
Well, I think what Matt said about it could be a revolving document, like we can just keep, I don't know if we want to set aside some time every meeting, and then we just look at progress and we check off,
Yeah, well, that's
right? So now it's always moving, and then when we come up with something, add it in. So now we're just moving as we go.
Right, we could be targeted.
Yeah.
Just like Matthew said, as we're working, cross it out, add something new, cross,
right.
you know.
The only downside of that would be it might be very short-term looking. So I don't know if a 6-month check-in where, hey, is this still aligned with where we want it to go? You know what I mean? Or if that kind of discussion will be happening every time that we allot the time, that'll be great. But maybe just something to consider. Because I think that's what the good thing about the annual work plan is. It kind of sets the tone for how are we deciding on all of these? How are we trying to help with all of the programs that are happening? How does it align with the work plan? Is it streamlined, right? The downside of it revolving is we're checking things off, but is it, are we getting too much in the weeds versus looking at strategy? Hey, are we aligned with what we've thought about for the year?
Do you feel like your office follows any type of flow? Like if we called it an annual work plan versus like a seasonal or something like this? I don't know if I mean, your office is probably very fluid. It's like
Yeah,
working.
we'll work with however the commission decides to move forward.
I just meant for ours to mirror yours.
Oh, okay. I mean, ours is, we operate on the fiscal year, so we're really just wrapping up that way. And what we do is seasonal, so there's chunks where, like, obviously summer is super crazy compared to winter. That's our time to catch up and start planning for the rest of the year, or for the new year. So from that aspect, I don't really have an answer for you, unfortunately.
Well,
but that is how we operate.
That
It
is a
is
good
more
answer,
seasonal.
and I feel like if in theory we were to mirror that, it would be to work on the work plan in the down season and to just support staff as best we can in the busy season. But I don't know if that even lines up with our doctrine, or if that makes any change at all.
I think if we look at the work plan every meeting, which is once a month, right? When we had this 3-month gap recently, but usually we meet every month, then we would be on target, we'd be relevant still, and then maybe in a year, a full year, whatever that means, because the composition of the committee will also change again, then we can revisit the work plan. Because if we wait until there's no down season for this department. They're always working on something. And we'll, to what extent you want to use us, if you want to use this as a sounding board, if you want us to approve, we don't have any regulatory powers, we don't have any approval powers, we don't have a budget as a commission either, so we really are just at the beck and call of staff and mayor and council.
I think I suggest that we do allot time every meeting.
Okay.
And I think we use it as a device to keep us in tow, right? Because I'm pretty sure this annual work plan was thought of with great consideration of the plan of the department. So it's just now us, every time that we check off one thing, we probably just have to put in some process like, how does it align with them? How are we helping? How does it look towards the longer term? Something like that. So now every meeting, we're checking stuff off. Are we aligned with those 3 questions, for example? And then, and now we progress because we're checking stuff off. We're also checking ourselves on how we value our roles in terms of our benefit in helping them, something like that.
Well, I think we did a good job today of targeting the ambassador program because that was on a work plan. So maybe we can draw out 2 or 3 things we can talk about every time we meet.
Okay.
That's directly connected to the work plan, because it does take some time for there to be discussion about those items.
That's right.
So with that being said, if you look at the work plan, which is at the very end of this packet we have in front of us, so for the section number 1, which is create innovative programs and services to engage the entire community. So we talked about 1E, which is that Youth Ambassador Program, and how we'll revamp it and improve marketing and make sure that we are hitting our key audience, namely Gabriel High School. Anything else in that section that we want to consider? We had two great presentations about, the services that were offered during the summer, including swim classes. So I haven't seen any class offerings for persons with disabilities yet. So maybe that's something that we need to work on. But, is there anything else that we should talk about within that section before we leave tonight?
I think to your point, we've covered quite a bit of it in today's session, but I do agree with you. I mean, what offerings do we even have for persons with disabilities at the moment? Besides, of course, we did hear about the carpool effort, which is great, just to increase their mobility. But beyond that, is there direct programming in place for?
Yeah, as of now, there's no direct programming for persons with disabilities.
Well, I mean, for me, this is a perfect example, right? Because it becomes a chicken and egg problem. But I think as long as it addresses, because I'm pretty sure with how they run their program, it's based on budget and effort, because considering how much stuff they're doing in a year. So as long as, for example, persons with disabilities, I think it somewhat aligns there. Not to look at it in a mediocre kind of thing, but for me, it's also considering the effort that their capacity to do more, right? So now it could be, there is one actually that's running right now, which we could consider the carpool program. How does it become more helpful for seniors? Stuff like that. And forgive me, I'm trying to step back into the process, right? Because I want us to be able to have a system of trying to address it every week, so now it becomes more easier for us to just like check off, and we're not questioning ourselves, hey, are we saying the right thing, or are we aligning with them? You know what I mean?
So I think, we should definitely see what we can leverage from current programs,
That's right.
like rideshare. But I think with 1B, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was to create new events and new programs and new services to serve the community. So that could be something that maybe staff can brainstorm to see how we can, with the swim, now that we have a way to tackle the problem with insufficient swim instructors, is there a way we can continue down that path and maybe offer a program
Most definitely.
for students who are disabled?
That was a plan for this summer, but again, not having the
Yeah.
capacity. But next summer, that's a good first step.
Yeah, because, we're thinking about it, so this is a way to add on to it.
I was going to ask, can't remember, is the gentleman with the beard?
Andy.
Yeah, I remember when he first came on, I believe he said he had some type of experience working with kids with disabilities and are on the spectrum.
I'm not familiar, but he does have extensive aquatics experience, so it would not surprise me if he's familiar.
Okay. But yeah, that line item was there. We were trying to get more programs for kids maybe on the spectrum, because there's like signing up for sports or anything, there's none for them. And to try and get them to play with other kids who, aren't on the spectrum, it's difficult because most of the kids don't understand why they're not understanding or picking up so.
Is there a fully inclusive playground in the city of San Gabriel? No.
So.
Because that would be a wonderful place for, to have an event where those folks with.
Yeah, I was going to say, because my oldest is on the spectrum, so this is the reason I added this here. The other day, I forgot where I was, maybe on Instagram, I noticed one of the local cities had autism day or an event. I need to find it and kind of see how they go about, or how they were able to kind of do that. And then, with the swim, I know the Rose Bowl Aquatics, I think, has one for a lot of the children who are autistic go there, and they always recommend it to us. So I was wondering, you said maybe this summer we might be able to incorporate it. because even with the swim, my oldest, he, it's harder for him to understand what the instructors are kind of telling him. So, yeah, so definitely want to try and get more programs. I'm trying to reach out to some like Easter Seals and Regional Center to see if they could help and maybe provide, like I think we had discussed before, maybe the city sets up a day on a Saturday where, the kids can come by and maybe focus on maybe just interacting, just make friends. Because right now, my oldest, he's in 8th grade and no friends. It's hard for him to do that.
Could we, because like for example, right now, there's a good line of events that are lined up. Could this be also part of, let's say, the Lunar Festival, right? That there's some recognition, that there's some inviting them over. You know what I mean? Like some mini things that will happen in there. So now we're trying to instill more of that awareness where, hey, we have to be more inclusive with these kinds of events. Because we could do it, if I were to look at it long term, we could do it 3 ways. Step 1 is awareness, more of like, oh, we actually have these events that are happening. But phase 1 would be, hey, we have these events right now that are lined up. Why don't we try putting in some of these little programs like, oh, there's a section that they're all in there, and then sometime in a show or in something that, hey, we recognize that the group is here, and, if you want to have any questions, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So now, phase 1, for example, awareness, and then next would be following year, since we're seeing traction for it, they could start planning for more specific ones. So now we're still running with the annual program where we're introducing it because we just can't do it, for example, in 1 year, right? Now we're creating an effort for continuity where we're establishing the groundwork for it right now and then having it in line with what we have already budgeted. And then in that line, we're actually checking this thing off. I mean, you know what I mean? That we're putting our efforts in it.
No, I definitely like the steps, the recognition, of course, just letting people know. But I think a lot of it has to do with training as well, because it's not everyone can just, automatically, assist or, do that. It takes special training.
That's right.
So that's why I was engaging other vendors like Easter Seals and like my son does speech at another company, just seeing if I can coordinate something and then maybe refer them to my Matthew to set something up maybe on the weekend or do some small little event. From there, at least we would have trained individuals coming there. But yeah, no, I like the idea of the current events kind of just somehow doing some type of just recognition, just very basic.
Because you have to do it two-pronged too. I'm not sure even if the team is that well-versed in understanding what the needs are for them to plan it out for their programs, right? So now, if we're doing it internally first and then, which is one step, now it'll be easier to include it in all the other events. Now, oh, hey, wait a minute, we have these 3 events that we can actually line something up in there, right? Because they're demographically focused, they're age range focused. Okay, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of the ones in the spectrum in that specific age range. Okay, then let's put something in there, like, you know what I mean? A lot, 15, 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Now, even internally in everyone else, there's more of that understanding of inclusivity in all of the other efforts. Now it will become more normal. So
when we're referring to the neurodiverse population, it is very diverse, right? So there are students who are on the spectrum, there are students who have ADHD, we have students who have processing disorders, and the way you treat each of, there's no cookie cutter solution basically, right? So maybe it sounds like what we're saying is, can we fund training for staff to be more aware? Could there be someone who comes in for an hour? We did so much nonviolence workplace training.
that's right.
Like it could just be like a video, I don't know, like videos, there's problems with that too. But if you can bring someone in just for the staff to be trained on it.
Yeah, that's huge.
On the different populations that are out there. I don't know if we have the budget for that, but that could be one way to address the awareness
Even
issue.
having existing data on our own population that may be in the neurodiverse community.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we can branch out from.
Yeah, do we have the data? I mean, that's part of actually work plan, section 4, which is developing innovative resources and tools to achieve our mission, which I would assume includes understanding more about the demographics, right? Because very often it's broken down by income, gender, age, language. Maybe there could be something about the different types of needs, right? Could be a physical disability, it could be a mental disability. I don't know if that sensitive information can be released by the school district. There is a school, though, in Del Mar that, is a continuation school. So, I mentioned that because I live by there, so on Broadway, so maybe we could ask them to provide some training for free,
Yeah.
right? Have like a lunch teach-in.
What was that?
Maybe just a teach-in is
Oh,
what,
yeah.
I don't know if you want to provide lunch, if that's part of the budget, but that's the easy way for people just to come,
Yeah.
it's a good draw for that. And then, we can look, for the Lunar New Year event or for the holiday tree lighting, there could be an area set aside for folks who have sensory processing disorders. Maybe if it's like there's too much happening, all those balloons are coming towards them, there could be a place where you section it off, or it's a little bit more quiet.
Yeah, like that foam thing, the majority of them would probably be kind of scared,
Okay.
or especially with the large amount of people there. It's
Rushing,
just, that's one of the things there. But yeah, I don't think you'd be able to kind of do one little section for them for that. Depends how many show up as well, too.
Yeah. So maybe we can have a separate conversation about kind of what that would look like, because I'll be honest and say I've taken several college courses, but that was 10 years ago, so I don't know how relevant it is at this point either. So having some additional knowledge of what that could look like and not separating people either to where they're obviously separate from
Yeah.
the event. That would not be the goal either. So
Okay.
yeah, any information you can provide would be.
Yeah, but I think that'll be a very good first step, right? Just internally, for example, you can't let the blind lead the blind. So, right, if now everyone's more aware, right, they're more well versed in it, and it will automatically be in the programs, and that's a very, very huge step.
So I think we're addressing point 1D, where we're selecting liaisons, not necessarily to the city council, but for the department, right, in terms of looking at marketing for the youth program, someone from the commission who can speak to disability services and how to carve out certain events so that it's engaging for the students as well as it's separate enough so that they don't feel overwhelmed. So I think we're definitely working on section 1. I think section 2, to the extent that we're there, we usually do staff the booths. I don't know if we're actively doing that. In the past, we would just have commissioners volunteer for each
Yeah,
event.
we'll have a list of the events and
list
then
of
like,
things.
hey, who can kind of show up for an hour at least, or the whole time if you can. But
Yeah, I did that at Culture Fest. That's how I met Andy. Yeah, so sure, that would be fun.
Okay. So I think we do continue to staff those events. For section 3, again, we just have to knock out Here Commission. We obviously have the Culture Fest. We hit that squarely in the nose with the Culture Fest, right? So we can cross that out. But obviously continue to think about it because it's an ongoing item. And I think the last section was on 4, which is this data collection question, using different channels like WeChat, cross-promoting programs, which you had talked about again, too. We are definitely working on 4D, which is the RFP. And we didn't talk about the case manager, the part-time case manager, although I think, didn't we already hire someone?
They started
Okay.
in May, I believe.
Okay, so, we're pretty much on target in terms of this work plan.
Yeah, I mean,
For where we
looking
are
at-
in the
yeah.
year. Yeah. We could think about it some more and add more ways of making sure that we are committed to finding different avenues to address these points because they're so important.
Yeah.
So we can continue to throw in suggestions. So when we do have suggestions individually before we meet up, what do we do? Should we send them to you to add to the agenda, or does it have to be approved through a process before the agenda can be updated?
For the work plan,
Not just the work,
Or-
well, items that relate to the work plan, like, oh, I have an idea, this could be a good event.
yeah.
How do we get that point across to staff?
So if you're wanting to have a discussion with staff or myself prior to the meeting, then just shoot me an email and we'll set up a time for that to happen. If it's just to add the item to the agenda, just shoot me an email and I'll add that, no problem, especially if it's just, items for the work plan. If it's a separate agenda item, kind of non-related to the work plan, or if you're wanting to really hyper-focus on something that would even require a vote or something like that, then that typically would come from the chair of the commission, or you can mention it during commissioner comments and request to have it added on. If everyone is kind of in agreement that it should be added on to the next one, then we'll add it on that way.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions about the work plan? All right. So we are moving on to commission reports. Each commissioner may address the Community Services Commission and public on matters of general concern and/or information. This is also the time for commissioners to report on conferences and or meetings they have attended. So we will skip Commissioner Shi. Commissioner Lotz?
I have no comment at this time.
I'm good.
No comment.
And no comments from myself. So we can move on to staff comments. Staff members have the opportunity to address the commission and public on matters of general information and or concern.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay. So the next regular Community Services Commission meeting will be held on Monday, November 4th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Information regarding matters to be considered at each meeting will be available on the Friday before the Community Services Commission meeting on the city's website at www.sangabrielcity.com. This regular meeting is now adjourned at 8:39 p.m.